Hey, what's going on, guys? FlynnMasters coming at you with another video, and today I'll be ranking each cast of Hell's Kitchen based on how good they are as characters and general entertainment. So obviously I did a talent ranking for each cast for Hell's Kitchen, and I didn't think I would do a ranking based on characters because I figured that'd be too similar to like a season ranking. But that's what's interesting about me compared to a lot of other people is, while a cast is obviously important to me for sure, that's not the biggest thing, as I've always been more of a moments type person, and that goes for all shows, not just Hell's Kitchen. So it'll be interesting to see how my cast ranking corresponds to how I view the season overall. With that said, though, at the bottom of my ranking is indeed my least favorite season, with that being the cast of season 9. And again, it's not just Elise. I really don't care for this entire cast other than Tommy and Jennifer. And I guess I have grown on Will a bit. But yeah, the red team is just complete awful team, as you got Elise and Carrie bickering nonstop, and everyone else is just completely overshadowed by the two. And again, I have been vocal about not liking the blue team like others do. Again, I have grown on Will a lot, but I think Monterey has always been a fun underdog early boot. But the likes of Paul, Brendan, Chino, and Jonathan, I just flat out do not like. And I don't love Natalie as much as others do. So, yeah, while there is, a couple obvious standouts here, there's just a lot of, most of this cast is just either flat out bad or just invisible characters. And, of course, highlighted by my least favorite chef, if not least favorite TV character of all time. So, that is why Season 9 is at the bottom for me. At number 22 is a cast who a lot of people I'm sure would have last, and that is the cast of Season 16. And there's no way around how awful the Season 16 blue team is, not to mention Gia is pretty nasty on the red team. And I don't find the final three interesting whatsoever, despite them being very talented. But I do think there are some big standouts in the likes of Aaron and Devin on the blue team, and the red team definitely has some rootable chefs, such as Kim, Wendy, and Jessica for having to deal with the blue team. Azizo is really chill, and Shayna is an all-time underrated chef in my opinion. So I do think the good is just enough to make up for the unforgivable bad, which keeps this cast out of the bottom spot. At number 21 is the cast of Young Guns, and while I enjoy this season more than most, it's definitely not due to the cast. I mean, if you guys remember my chef ranking for this season, I just did not have much to say about basically anyone. And hey, there's no real unlikable chefs either, but other than Steve and Antonio, there is just nothing I can tell you about this cast. So yeah, while this may seem a bit too low considering there's no true unlikable chefs, at the same time, at most 3 or 4 chefs have any sort of personality this season, which is why Young Guns lands here at 21. At number 20 is very similar to Young Guns in that there's not much to talk about, with that being the cast of season 13. And not only does most of the season's cast not add much of note, but unlike Young Guns, there's some pretty unlikable chefs here, mainly Steve and Aaron, 2 Sterling haters, with Steve in general being an all-time least favorite of mine. I really didn't like Bryant, especially after his rage on Aaron. But at the same time, also unlike Young Guns, I feel there's simply flat out more standout chefs here. I mean, you obviously got Sterling, of course, but I also think Jennifer is a pretty underrated villain. Latasha is that spark plug chef I always love. And in general, this Black Jacket Brigade, the Final 4 especially, is just so much more interesting than Young Guns, which is why it's nearly above that season, here at number 20. At number 19 is the OG Season 1 cast. And of course, you got the obvious standouts of Michael and Elsie, but other than that, there's just not much here. I mean, Ralph is a fun runner-up, and Andrew had an interesting arc. But again, the problem with season 1 is that between it being so short, and a short cast, of course, and the show trying to find itself, it's just tough to get too invested into most of these chefs. So yeah, another just very plain cast, but for obvious reasons, I'm a bit nicer to it compared to the seasons below it. At number 18 is Battle of the Ages. And again, as expected, the 40-somethings were mostly duds, other than Tara and Alex, who both do add a ton to the season. But yeah, the 20-somethings are definitely what propels this cast, at least a little bit. Alejandro and Cheyenne are fun chefs, Summer had a fun run, and even some of the early boots, who to be fair are 40-somethings, like Zeus and Billy, were pretty memorable, all things considered. But again, just not too much of substance. Even the mentioned Black Jacket chefs, while they're fine enough, that's the thing, they're just fine as personalities. So due to the lack of standouts, Battle of the Ages lands here at number 18. On to number 17 now, and we stay on the just fine type of cast, with that being our most recent cast and head chefs only. And I don't even think the chefs here will argue that, yeah, they're not super exciting, because frankly, why would they be? They're bosses in their real life, essentially as head chefs, so you wouldn't expect them to be super spunky or over the top. You do have your standouts here and there, as Anne-Marie and Magali were really fun. Egypt had a great arc this season, and the season literally gave us the most over-the-top winner ever in Kyle, which is obviously ironic. And there's no one this season I truly dislike, and at the end of the day, similar to other casts though around these spots, just not too much of note about this cast, which is why it lands here at number 17. At number 16 is a cast who you might have thought would have been a lot lower, but I do have the cast of All-Stars. And here's the thing, yes, a lot of chefs' reputation went down this season, But as actual characters, like most of them are all-stars for a reason. And it was so cool, for example, to see the likes of Giovanni and Ben on my screen again, despite their short stays. Van coming back to Hell's Kitchen was amazing. Jennifer, while invisible, it was great to see her outlast Elise. And of course, the fact that Benjamin and Nick, of all people, dominated the season as much as they did was incredible to me. But at the same time, we do get a ton of personalities back this season who were indeed nasty still here. And a lot of early boots just simply do not add much to the season. But again, between the standout chefs and the fact that at least most of this cast are truly great personalities, I think 16 is a good spot for All-Stars. On to number 15 now, and this is why doing a video like this is so interesting, because while it's a top 10 season for me, the cast is below average, with that being the cast of season 15. And again, I totally see why people don't like this season if you indeed factor the cast as the most important part, as there are a lot of duds early on, some unlikable characters in Ariel and of course Frank, and even chefs like Chat, Danny, and Ashley, who are good chefs and make deepest runs, just aren't that interesting. Now, I do like Jared more than most. Manda's a spunky underdog. I love Kristen as a runner-up. Hassan was a beast early on, and Joe is probably the most underrated contestant in the show's history. But overall, just a below average cast to me, despite the season itself being really good. At number 14 is a season I didn't think I would have this high going into the video, but at 14 is the cast of season 11. A very interesting season as well. There are chefs that indeed are just kind of there. For better or for worse, there are a lot of notable chefs as well. Let's start with the good. Obviously, Anthony and John are beloved. Mary had an amazing underdog run, even though I'm not as high on her as others. And Nedra just might be the most funny over-the-top chef in Hell's Kitchen history. But there's also some pretty annoying chefs, with Zach being the standout. Ray and Dan, while I don't hate by any means, could be pretty annoying. Michael was an overconfident douche. And on the red side, while nobody particularly annoying, a lot of duds there. But at the same time, also some memorable donkeys in the likes of Jeremy, Danielle, and of course Sebastian. So that's the thing, around half this cast is either unlikable or annoying, but at the same time, the other half are rootable and add something of value to the season. So there's a lot of factors here, and I guess when you combine all the factors, in the end, I think 14 is a good spot for season 11. At number 13 is the cast of season 2. And I've said this numerous times, but this feels like the true, memorable cast of Hell's Kitchen that season 1 just didn't provide. You got that iconic first boot donkey and Polly, some other iconic donkeys and Giacomo and Tom. Rachel and Keith were massive fan favorites, and of course Heather is my favorite female winner. Now, obviously there are some duds and unlikable chefs such as Larry, Gabe, Sarah, Garrett, and Maribel. But even then, everyone other than Maribel at least adds something to the season. So again, a very damn good cast, and if the cast was just a bit bigger, I'm sure it would be higher. But it's just not quite as deep as other seasons, and thus it lands here at 13. At number 12 is the cast of season 3. And pretty much every chef this season adds something to the season. Maybe other than Eddie, but even he himself, had a little, genetic disorder. I mean, sure, Tiffany was an unlikable first boot, but what a iconic first boot she was. Yeah, Melissa going from a badass to a complete downfall. Brad was a beast. Say what you will about Rock, but he obviously provided us with some all-time fun moments. Bonnie is a beloved underdog finalist, and say what you will about Josh, but God is he hilarious. And Aaron's an all-time beloved early boot. There are some duds here and there, though, and Joanna and Jen, despite the latter being damn near being a finalist. I hate Vinny, and even though the cast all around is better than, say, the season 2 cast, it doesn't have that absolute top-tier characters to put much higher than that cast. But nonetheless, still the best Golden Era cast in my opinion, and it lands here at number 12. At number 11 is a season while my top 10 is relatively low compared to most, and I do think in retrospect the cast has a lot to do with that being the cast of season 4. And to be frank, there is a lot of nastiness this season. Obviously, Jason and Jen are just flat out bad. No matter how much they bring to the season, they're just awful humans. Ben and Matt, again, while fun characters, just not very likable. I'm not big on Corey and Christina as much as others are. Craig was kind of a douche. I mean, half the cast just doesn't do it for me. And again, that's the thing. While there is so much great about this season, when I just simply don't enjoy half the people I'm watching, I just can't get too invested. But at the same time, there is a lot of good, of course, with the big three being the highlights, and Bobby, Lou Ross, and of course Petroza. Roseanne and Vanessa were good characters for what they brought to the season. So, I can't put it this season too low because there are hardly any duds, and this cast makes for an overall entertaining experience. But when I just don't like or care about half of them, I just can't put it too high either. And thus, I believe essentially the middle here at 11 is a great spot for the season 4 cast. On to the top 10, and at number 10 is a cast that a lot of people are very low on. And while I'm a lot lower on the cast compared to the season itself, I still like this cast more than most, with that being the cast of season 7. And I won't say this cast is super memorable or anything. And I think the big thing that makes me appreciate this cast compared to most is me wanting to root for that Season 7 Red team. You know, like I talked about for my team ranking video, I wanted to root for the likes of Nuka and Holly to do well, inspire the team they're put on. I was laughing my absolute ass off every time Siobhan and Fran made it to another round. And say what you will about Benjamin and Scott, the fact that they were so unhelpful on that team is just hilarious and made for some very fun moments. And the blue team also had its fun members. I love Salvatore and Jason. Autumn bringing that team together was cool. Calm and collected Ed getting completely batshit drunk was amazing. So, like, while I agree it's not an amazing cast by any means, I still think it's a damn fun one overall. At number 9 is an all-time great season, but the cast itself isn't quite as top tier in my eyes, with that being the cast of season 5. And you know, there are a lot of iconic chefs here, but there are also a bit too many duds for my liking, especially for a Golden Era season, like LA, Coy, Sarah, Charlie, even Carol and Giovanni to a degree are just kind of there. But let's go over all the good here as well. Like, say what you will about Colleen, Lacey, and Seth, but there are some literal all-time funny donkeys. Denny and Paula, while not necessarily like amazing personalities or anything, they're such a great final two for how likable they are. Andrew and Ben had such interesting arcs this season, and Robert was flat out hilarious. So, I don't know, this is a tough one, as a good majority of the cast, you know, they do add something to the season, but even then, like, someone like Robert, while I like him, he should never be, like, my favorite chef of a season, despite how funny he was, because, you know, let's be real, he could be nasty as well. And I think that goes to show that there's just not, you know, those, you know, 2 to 3 truly beloved chefs on this season for me, you know, like you see on the season above the season or even below it. And so while a great cast overall, just not quite top tier, and season 5 lands here at number 9. At number 8 is a season I had the toughest time deciding on whether I really did like it or not, but I do have the cast of season 10. And, you know, I have said in the past how I always question why people hate season 16 but love season 10 when I kind of find them around the same. And, you know, I still do not love the red team fights by any means. But you have to admit, it does not make for boring television whatsoever. Like, even I cannot overlook that. And other than the hated 3 for the red team and some forgettable boots here and there, pretty much all this cast adds something to the season. I mean, the blue team is my 3rd favorite team ever when it comes to all these great chefs like Brian, Clemenza, Justin, Roasting when she switched was awesome. You got the likable big 3 on the red team to go against the hated trio and Barbie, Dana, and of course the legendary Christina Wilson. To which again, I'm not as high on them compared to others, but still really fun chefs. So again, Robin and Tiffany are both 2 all-time hated chefs of mine, with Kimmy right behind them. But the fact that they do make for anything but boring TV, and that there's so many flat-out entertaining great characters here, as overbearing as the season can be for me, the cast itself is iconic for a reason, which is why I feel I have no choice but to put it in my top 10. At number 7 is a season that I could see many people having in their top 5, with that being the cast of season 19. And I've said it numerous times, this season is just so instantly top-heavy with the beloved chefs of Mary Lou, Declan, Cody, and Corey, and Mark is an all-time great villain. And even though the rest of the cast is just kind of there, they're still mostly fun characters with a ton of talent. So yeah, another flat-out solid cast, just not quite top tier to me, due to nothing much of note coming from those first 10-ish boots or so. At number 6 now, and I probably shouldn't do this, but I don't care, I have the cast of season 8. And, you know, it may be unfair to rate them this high for being train wrecks. I guess, you know, because it's not really like them as characters and personality. But come on, you cannot say this cast isn't entertaining. I mean, it literally has Raj on here, for God's sakes. That alone would make it at least a top 10 entertaining cast. But even outside of that, like pretty much every chef on here has some notable funny moments from the constant mistakes they're making when they're just trying to do the best they can. Again, it's like the season 7 red team, except an entire cast this time. You just naturally want to root for them to do well in spite. Say what you will about Nona, but she's definitely a very entertaining winner. Julian was awesome, and Vinny's chill attitude really sets him apart from the rest of the cast. Now, obviously, there are some pretty notable nasty personalities here as well. Russell's my 2nd least favorite chef ever. I'm a lot lower on Rob and Sabrina than most. And while I don't hate Trev as much as others, like let's be frank, he did say some flat out disgusting things this season. But at the end of the day, for better or for worse, pretty much every chef adds something to the season in one way or another. And it's just so flat out entertaining. And that's what this list is after all. So season 8's cast does land very high here at number 6. On to the top 5 now. And I didn't think I would have this cast so high at first, but at number 5 is the cast of season 14. And while an above average cast for sure, I was thinking it would be kind of plain due to how good the cast is. But despite them being so talented, it's a charismatic cast as well. Obviously, T had her great moments. Megan acted like a little sous chef with how intense she was. Allison was that badass chef archetype I love. Michelle and Nick is a beloved duo. And Millie is most people's favorite character this season for very good reason. But similar to why I like this season so much, it's also why I love the cast. And, that's due to the early boots. With Krista, Michael, and Monique just being some iconic donkeys and making for some all-time hilarious episodes. Let's not forget that the little definition of passion and Brett was on the season. Hell, I haven't even mentioned Randy being a badass. Like, this is truly an all-around great cast and does deserve a spot in my top 5. At number 4 is easily the best cast of the 20s, with that being the cast of The American Dream. And again, similar to other new era casts, there are, your fair share of forgettable chefs here in Claudia, Jermaine, Devin, and Toya. But like the rest of the cast is just so freaking fun. Obviously, Tad, Brad, and Renisha are some of the best early boots ever. I've been notably high on Sandra's fun run this season. Jason is one of the best characters of the 20s. And that Black Jacket Brigade is just super likable, with Demir being another all-time fan favorite of mine. So just a stacked cast from top to bottom, but there are just a few too many duds for me compared to the top 3, which is why The American Dream lands here at number 4. At number 3 is a season I've gotten so high on over the years, and I think it's safe to say a lot of that has to do with the cast, with that being the cast of Rookies vs. Veterans. And yeah, the blue team for sure is what really makes this cast for me my all-time favorite ladies team, which is super funny considering it's the only true blue team ladies kitchen in Hell's Kitchen history. But yeah, the rookies and Gizzy, Kane, and me especially are all such massive standouts here. All such spark plugs and so positive. With Ariel, of course, while not super exciting, rounding this team out as that typical badass in the kitchen. She fits that role perfectly. And then the red team has some good stuff as well. Say what you will about Trev, but you have to respect his fight this season. Chris was an awesome dude, and Scott is an all-time funny first boot. Obviously, the big negative this season is the men who are against Trev. And while I don't condone it, I do think when it comes to the actual bullying, that was, 90% Scott Lee, while the others would just kind of give him a hard time and make him an easy target. To which is annoying and uncool for sure, but I don't actively dislike the likes of Jose, and especially Brett and Mato. So yeah, just very little duds here. I mean, the biggest duds were little former runners-up, just amazing. And only one character I actively don't like, with the rest of the cast being just extremely solid all the way around, with some true standouts here. And that's why Rookies vs. Veterans is at number 3 for me. At number 2 is the cast for my all-time favorite season, with that being the cast of Season 6. And again, there's some all-time great characters here, with that Black Jacket Brigade especially just being insane, featuring some all-time favorites of mine with the likes of Van, Tennille, and Dave. Kevin and Ariel, while not the most interesting personalities in the world, they're still great people who fought hard. Suzanne is a great villain. I also think there are some absolute hidden gems on this cast. Like, Tony is just absolutely hilarious. I've always really loved Amanda. Andy is a great underdog. Jim had some great one-liners and pretty funny. And Melinda and Lovely are hilarious donkeys. And honestly, I just enjoy the cast above it more, simply due to there being more volume. And there are a couple duds here and there in this season, like, Tech and Sabrina. And it was pretty sad to see Robert turn into a pretty big douchebag this season. But yeah, despite all the insane moments this season, let's not forget about how great the cast is as well. And that's why the Season 6 cast lands here at number 2. But at number 1, my favorite cast in Hell's Kitchen history is the cast of Season 12. And my saying for this season has always been that there are 20 episodes and there's essentially something interesting happening in each one. And I think you could use that motto for the actual 20 characters as well, maybe other than Chris and Bev, as everyone else adds something to the season. Obviously, Gaurav is an all-time great first boot. DeMarco and Beth both got pretty big edits and stories in general, despite being early boots. This season had a good set of villains that either are just train wrecks, that are eliminated early on and easy to laugh at, such as Nicole and Mike, or very polarizing villains such as Joy and Anton, who both add so much to the season, and of course have their positive moments as well. I've always been really high on the likes of Gabriel and Keisha compared to most people. Melanie's a great final boot. Jason proved to be a great character, and Rochelle and Scott are two top 10 favorites of mine. I mean, again, the fact that there are only 2 to 3 duds at most in a cast of 20 is absolutely insane to me. And that's why Season 12 is my favorite cast in Hell's Kitchen history. So there you have it, guys, my ranking of each Hell's Kitchen cast based on entertainment. Let me know what you think of my list in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe and like button to support the channel. And with all that said, take care everyone, and I'll see you next time.